Imagine yourself sitting on a quiet hillside where the clear sky meets the vastness of the earth. Around you, hundreds of people gather, all with attentive eyes, open ears, and hearts eager to listen. In front stands Jesus, serene and full of compassion, ready to share words that would echo throughout eternity. The place, simple but sacred, is filled with an atmosphere of anticipation, as if the very air were in reverence. Jesus raises his voice, but it is neither imposing nor authoritative. His voice is gentle yet firm, and his words carry an unparalleled weight. He speaks directly to the hearts of the people around him, simple folks, laborers, fishermen, ordinary people with their struggles and hopes. His words, however, are directed not just at them, but at all who seek something greater than themselves, something spiritual, something divine. In this setting, Jesus begins a revolutionary discourse, which would become known as the Sermon on the Mount. He wasn't there to talk about power, wealth, or earthly conquests. He was there to teach a new way of living, a new perspective that challenges the common logic of his time, and ours as well. What he offered was not rigid rules or cold dogmas but a path to the heart, to a full life rich with meaning. As Jesus begins to speak, the crowd senses that something profound is being revealed. It was an invitation to a journey of transformation, a call to see the world in an entirely new way. And so began the Sermon on the Mount, not as a mere sermon but as a manifesto for life. A manifesto that would touch generations and change history forever. Now, you are also sitting among that crowd, feeling the warmth of the sun, the gentle touch of the breeze, and you are about to hear words that may change everything. Jesus takes a deep breath and looks around. His eyes pass over each face with uncommon tenderness. Then he begins to speak about something that, at first glance, seems counterintuitive. Blessed are the poor in spirit, he says, and the crowd leans in a little closer to hear. Poor in spirit? What does he mean by that? Aren't the strong, the rich, the powerful the ones who are blessed? Jesus seems to suggest the opposite. He speaks of a kingdom not of this world, where those who recognize their own fragility, their need for something greater, are the truly blessed. For to them the kingdom of heaven is promised. And he continues, Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. The words cut through the air like a gentle breeze, yet they carry a depth that reverberates in the hearts of those who have suffered losses. Jesus does not glorify suffering itself but reveals that there is comfort, a divine comfort that transcends pain. Blessed are the meek, he continues, and some shift uneasily. What good is meekness in a world ruled by brute force? But Jesus sees beyond what the eyes can perceive. He teaches that the meek, those who do not impose their will with violence but live with humility and patience, will inherit the earth. Now he speaks of those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. These are the restless ones, those who yearn for a better world, who cry out for justice amid corruption. For them there is a promise, they will be filled. Not immediately, not perhaps in the way they imagine, but God's justice is sure and will come. Jesus speaks of the merciful, those who choose compassion over judgment. He promises that these, in their hands extended to help others, will find God's own mercy. He also speaks of the pure in heart, those whose sincerity and integrity shine without the stain of hidden agendas. They, says Jesus, will see God. And he continues, referring to the peacemakers, those who, instead of promoting conflict, spread peace. To them he gives a special title, Children of God. Finally, with a voice that seems almost reverent, Jesus speaks of those who are persecuted because of righteousness. For these, who face the greatest adversities for standing firm in their faith and principles, he reassures, theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Jesus' words fall like seeds on fertile soil. Each beatitude seems to turn the world upside down, offering a new perspective, a new hope. And at that moment, the crowd, and you, along with them, begin to understand that what Jesus is proposing is something extraordinary. He is describing the character of those who belong to the kingdom of God, and what he promises, even amid pain and difficulty, is a profound joy, a happiness that the world cannot offer nor take away. Jesus' words still hang in the air like a soft melody when he pauses briefly, letting the impact of his profound promises settle in the hearts. Then, with a steady and penetrating gaze, he addresses those before him directly. You are the salt of the earth, he says with a conviction that awakens new attention in the crowd. People exchange glances. Salt? How could they, ordinary people, be compared to salt? Jesus continues, explaining that salt, small and seemingly insignificant, has immense power. It preserves, it gives flavor. And so, those who follow his teachings have the role of preserving the good in the world, of adding flavor to life, of maintaining the essence of what is just and pure. But he also warns, if the salt loses its flavor, what good is it? It is a call to not lose their essence, to not allow the world to corrupt them. Immediately after, without giving much time for reflection, he speaks of light. You are the light of the world, he says firmly. Light, something that dispels darkness, that guides, that reveals the way. Jesus explains that a city built on a hill cannot be hidden. Likewise, the followers of his word cannot hide. They cannot conceal the light they carry. On the contrary, this light must shine for all, so that in seeing their good deeds, they may glorify the Father in heaven. The metaphors are simple but carry immense weight. Jesus is not merely suggesting that his listeners live discreetly. He is giving them a mission. They, simple men and women, are called to be examples, to be a positive influence in the world around them. Every act of kindness, justice, mercy, all these are like a light shining in the darkness, guiding others to the path of God. You are the salt of the earth, he says with a conviction that awakens new attention in the crowd. People exchange glances. Salt? How could they, ordinary people, be compared to salt? Jesus continues, explaining that salt, small and seemingly insignificant, has immense power. It preserves, it gives flavor. And so, those who follow his teachings have the role of preserving the good in the world, of adding flavor to life, of maintaining the essence of what is just and pure. But he also warns, if the salt loses its flavor, what good is it? It is a call to not lose their essence, to not allow the world to corrupt them. Immediately after, without giving much time for reflection, he speaks of light. You are the light of the world, he says firmly. Light, something that dispels darkness, that guides, that reveals the way. Jesus explains that a city built on a hill cannot be hidden. Likewise, the followers of his word cannot hide. They cannot conceal the light they carry. On the contrary, this light must shine for all, so that in seeing their good deeds, they may glorify the Father in heaven. The metaphors are simple but carry immense weight. Jesus is not merely suggesting that his listeners live discreetly. He is giving them a mission. They, simple men and women, are called to be examples, to be a positive influence in the world around them. Every act of kindness, justice, mercy, all these are like a light shining in the darkness, guiding others to the path of God. And you, hearing these words, feel the responsibility hovering over your shoulders, but also a strange joy. It is not a heavy burden but a call to be part of something greater. To be salt and light, to be a force of transformation in a world that often loses itself in darkness. Jesus pauses briefly, observing the curious and thoughtful expressions of those around him. He knows that what he is about to say will be as challenging as it is revealing. He then speaks again, this time with a calm but unmistakable authority. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets, he declares. I have not come to abolish them but to fulfill them. The people watch him with renewed attention. Many there were familiar with the law of Moses, with the traditions of the prophets. The law was the foundation of their religious and moral life, and the expectation that the Messiah would bring something new may have raised doubts about what would happen to it. Jesus does not reject the law. On the contrary, he affirms it, but in a way that surprises everyone. He came to deepen it, to reveal its true meaning. And what he says next challenges any superficial understanding of righteousness. He is not there to discard the old commands but to bring forth the spirit behind them, something that transcends external rules and penetrates the heart. Jesus continues with a powerful warning, unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. For many this is perplexing. The Pharisees were known for their strict adherence to the law, their meticulous precision in fulfilling every detail. How could anyone surpass them? But Jesus is not speaking of righteousness based solely on external acts. He refers to something deeper, an inner transformation. It is not about following rules out of obligation or to appear righteous in the eyes of others. It is about a genuine commitment that arises from the heart, to live according to God's will in every aspect of life. The righteousness he proposes is a righteousness of the heart, an integrity that goes beyond appearances and is reflected in every thought, intention, and action. Jesus' words once again destabilize any idea that following God would be simply a matter of following rules. He is calling his listeners, and you, to something far more challenging and, at the same time, infinitely more liberating. It is a call to live a life that reflects the very character of God, a life of mercy, purity, compassion, and genuine love. And you realize that the path Jesus is outlining is not an easy road, but it is a path of authenticity, of surrender, of deep transformation. He is not asking for mere obedience but a new way of being, a righteousness that springs from the heart and transforms the world around. The words of Jesus now delve even deeper into the issues that inhabit the human heart. He looks at the crowd and begins to speak about a topic that everyone there knows well. conflict, divisions, the wounds left by offenses, big and small. He speaks about the power of forgiveness and reconciliation, something that touches the core of community and personal life. You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, "You shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment." The crowd agrees. This is a clear commandment, easy to understand. But Jesus doesn't stop there. He goes further, much further. "But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment." The silence among the crowd is almost palpable. Anger? Simply feeling anger already puts us under judgment? For many, this sounds radical, but Jesus is not just interested in external behavior. He is pointing to the root of human conflict, the heart. It is there, in hidden emotions and intentions, that the first steps toward wrongdoing begin. Anger that grows unchecked, the cruel words spoken in the heat of the moment, all of this can be as destructive as the act of violence itself. He continues, going deeper. If you are offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to them, then come and offer your gift. This teaching is extraordinary. Jesus is saying that the relationship with others is so important, so sacred, that it must even precede religious rites. Before seeking God, one must seek reconciliation with others. Broken relationships need to be healed. Grievances need to be resolved. It is a complete reversal of priorities. Peace with others reflects peace with God. You can almost feel the tension in those listening, for everyone there carries their own stories of conflict, of unresolved resentments. And you, perhaps, begin to think of your own wounds, of the people with whom you need to make peace. The task is not easy, but Jesus makes it clear. The path of reconciliation is essential for those who want to live in communion with God. Forgiveness, as Jesus teaches, is not a weakness. It is a profound power that frees not only the one who forgives but also the one who is forgiven. And it is not optional, it is imperative. Only then can the cycle of anger, pain, and revenge be broken. Jesus is showing that the kingdom of God is built on the foundations of peace, forgiveness, and reconciliation, and all are called to live this truth, beginning within themselves. Jesus' words, so challenging, seem to echo in the minds and hearts of those around him. He is asking for something that goes beyond the common understanding of justice. He is inviting you and everyone else to a new way of being, where reconciliation is not just a choice but an essential path to living in peace with God and others. Jesus' words continue to resonate, and while the weight of forgiveness and reconciliation still lingers in the air, he takes a new step toward the human heart. Now, Jesus speaks of purity, not just the purity that the eyes can see, but the one that springs from the most intimate place of being, the heart. You have heard that it was said, "You shall not commit adultery." He begins, once again citing the law. The crowd once more agrees. This commandment is clear, straightforward, easy to comprehend in its literal form. But, as Jesus had done before, he deepens the understanding, and his words are like a mirror to the heart. "But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart." There is a subtle murmur among the people. Now he is speaking of something much more intimate, something that happens in a place where no one else sees, the heart and the mind. Jesus is not just concerned with visible acts of sin but with the intentions and thoughts that are born within us. He reveals that sin begins long before the action. It begins in the soul, in disordered desires, in the thoughts we secretly cultivate. For Jesus, purity is much more than external conduct. It is an inner state of sincerity and wholeness, where the heart is not divided between desire and holiness, between lust and love. He is asking for a profound transformation, an internal cleansing that reaches even the most hidden corners of the mind. But he doesn't stop there. With a severity that surprises, he adds, "If your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell." The words are strong, and Jesus is using clear hyperbole to make his point. He is not suggesting that anyone literally mutilate themselves, but rather that anything that leads us into sin, any thought or desire that draws us away from God, must be cut out of our lives with firmness and decision. Jesus is calling his listeners, and you who are listening so attentively, to a level of self-control that challenges human nature. But he does so for good reason. He knows that sin, when nurtured in the heart, eventually manifests in destructive actions. And to prevent this, constant vigilance over our thoughts and desires is necessary. The message is clear: true purity comes from within. It is not something achieved merely by avoiding certain behaviors but something that flourishes when the heart is fully surrendered to God, with no room for distractions and desires that could pull us away from him. Jesus is calling everyone there, And you, to live a life where the integrity of the heart is just as important as the integrity of actions. Hearing these words, you feel the weight of this responsibility, but also the possibility of true transformation, where peace and purity walk hand in hand, not just in external actions but in the deepest and most secret place of your soul. Jesus takes a brief pause, allowing his words about purity to settle in the hearts of each listener. He knows he is stirring deep areas of human life, revealing truths that are not always easy to face. But now, his attention turns to something that is central to anyone seeking a connection with the divine: prayer. With a calm voice but one filled with authority, Jesus begins, "And when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites. They love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by others. Truly I tell you, they have received their reward in full." His tone is gentle but the words are clear. He is warning against the common practice of making prayer a spectacle, a display of piety that, deep down, seeks only the approval of others. "But when you pray," he continues, "go into your room, close the door and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you." Here, Jesus reveals a new dimension of prayer: intimacy. True prayer is not a public performance. It is a private moment of encounter with God. It is in the secret place, away from the eyes of the world, that God hears, sees, and responds. For Jesus, prayer is much more than words spoken aloud. It is a heart-to-heart dialogue with the Father, a place of vulnerability and sincerity where external appearances lose their meaning, and what matters is the state of the heart. Then he teaches one of the most well-known and recited prayers of all time, a prayer simple but rich in meaning. "This then is how you should pray: Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name, your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven." These words, which would echo throughout the centuries, are a reminder of who God is: Father, near but also holy and sovereign. They call us to submit our lives to his will, trusting that his plan is greater and better than any desire of our own. Jesus continues, "Give us today our daily bread." He teaches us to depend on God not only for our spiritual needs but also for our physical ones. Each day is a new gift, and our daily needs must be placed in the hands of the Father who cares for us. "And forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors." Here, Jesus links divine forgiveness with human forgiveness. He reminds us that the grace we receive is intrinsically connected to the grace we offer. Forgiveness is a flow that runs in both directions, from God to us and from us to others. "And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one." With these words, Jesus acknowledges human frailty. He teaches us to ask for protection, to seek refuge in God's strength in the face of temptations and dangers that threaten to lead us astray. As he concludes this prayer, Jesus offers not just a formula but a model of how to relate to God. He teaches that prayer is not a list of requests but a living connection with the Creator, who invites us to trust in him in every area of our lives, in our needs, in our failures, in our temptations. You feel the power of this truth deepening. Jesus is offering more than a teaching on prayer. He is opening the door to a new way of relating to God, a relationship based on trust, intimacy, and a heart humbly bowed before the Father who is in heaven but also dwells in everyone who seeks him in spirit and in truth. After teaching the prayer, Jesus pauses. The silence around him is filled with the weight of what he has just shared. Then, with a gentle look, he begins to speak about something that touches the core of human concerns: the future, daily needs, the anxiety about what is to come. "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes?" Jesus lifts his eyes and points to the birds flying freely in the sky. "Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they?" His words cut deep. Life is full of uncertainties, worries about tomorrow, about what will be needed to survive. But Jesus is calling everyone to radical trust, to abandon the incessant anxiety in favor of simple, profound faith. He is not saying that needs are not real, but that there is a greater order at work, a divine providence that sustains even the simplest creatures of creation. If God takes care of the birds, how much more will he care for his children? And he continues, this time pointing to the flowers around him. "See how the flowers of the field grow. They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you, you of little faith?" Jesus' words are both an invitation and a challenge. He invites us to trust fully in God's provision, to abandon the incessant worry that consumes so many hearts. At the same time, he challenges people to see beyond the surface of things. If even the flowers of the field, which are fleeting, are so beautifully cared for, how much more can humans, created in the image of God, trust in the loving care of the Father? Jesus then reaches the crucial point. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. He calls everyone to reverse their priorities. Instead of worrying incessantly about tomorrow, about material needs, he says that we should first seek the kingdom of God. This kingdom, based on justice, peace, and love, must be the main goal, the center of our attention. And in doing so, the other needs will be met. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Jesus concludes this part with a wisdom that resonates deeply. Life should be lived one day at a time, with trust and hope in God's care. Worrying about the future only steals the present of its peace. Jesus is calling everyone to live with a faith that transcends fear, anxiety, and uncertainty. You feel these words penetrating your own heart. The invitation is clear: trust. Trust that by seeking God's kingdom, by living according to his teachings, the needs of life will be provided in ways you may not even imagine. It is not a call to recklessness but to a deep rest in the assurance that God cares for his children, just as he cares for all of creation. With trust in divine care still echoing in the hearts of the crowd, Jesus now shifts focus, but his words remain profound and challenging. He turns to a matter that is intertwined with everyone's life: judgment. With a serious expression, he begins to speak about something that is universally human: the tendency to judge others. Do not judge, or you too will be judged, he says. The silence among the listeners grows even heavier. Everyone knows what it is to be judged, and honestly, everyone knows what it is to judge others. Jesus continues, "For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you." There is a disconcerting clarity in these words. Jesus is teaching that the judgment we pass on others will come back to us. The way we evaluate, condemn, or criticize others is the same measure that will be used against us. He is not just warning about the consequences, but also drawing attention to the hypocrisy that often accompanies judgment. Then, with an image that almost provokes a nervous smile in some, he paints a powerful metaphor. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, "Let me take the speck out of your eye," when all the time there is a plank in your own eye? The image is vivid and somewhat absurd, but profoundly true. Jesus reveals how ridiculous it is when we try to correct the faults of others without first looking at our own. The plank in our own eyes prevents us from seeing clearly, blinding us to our own condition. And yet, it is much easier to focus on the errors of others than to face our own. "You hypocrite," Jesus says, but not with cold condemnation, rather with the intent to bring clarity and self-understanding. First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. The lesson here is clear: before correcting others, we must correct ourselves. Jesus does not say we should never help others improve, but that we should do so from a place of humility and recognition of our own flaws. He continues, now with a warning about the wisdom of sharing spiritual truths with those who are not ready to receive them. Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. Jesus is advising discernment. There are times when, even with the best intentions, our wisdom and help may be wasted or even turned against us if offered to those who are not open to receiving them. This part of Jesus' teaching is an invitation to self-criticism, humility, and discernment. He challenges us to look within ourselves before trying to correct others, and to remember that we are all flawed, all in need of grace. When we judge others, we end up condemning ourselves, but by practicing humility and compassion, we allow transformation to begin in us, and through that, impact those around us. Hearing these words, you feel the truth of them weighing on your own judgments and perceptions. Jesus is calling everyone, including you, to a life of humility, where self-criticism precedes any criticism of others, where love and understanding surpass judgment. It is a difficult lesson but a liberating one, offering a path to true peace with others and, more importantly, with oneself. After addressing judgment, Jesus pauses. The atmosphere feels saturated with the gravity of his words, but now he prepares to conclude, to bring everything he has taught to a final point of reflection, something simple yet powerful. He then looks at the crowd with eyes full of compassion and speaks about the choice that everyone, inevitably, must make in response to everything they have heard. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. People begin to picture the scene. Jesus speaks of a house, not just a temporary shelter, but a structure that represents each person's life. Building on the rock means making firm, grounded choices based on the teachings he has just shared. The wind may blow, the rains may fall, the storms may rage, but that house will not be shaken because its foundation is solid, stable. Those who practice Jesus' teachings are building a life that can withstand the inevitable challenges that will come. But then, with a more somber tone, he continues, "But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on the sand." Again, a clear image forms in everyone's mind. The house may look good on the outside, but its foundation is unstable, fragile. When the winds and storms come, and they come for everyone, the house falls and its collapse is great. It is a clear and serious warning. Jesus' teaching is not just to be heard, it is to be lived. The difference between stability and ruin lies in whether we practice or ignore what he has taught. Jesus makes it clear that there is a choice to be made, to build on the rock or on the sand. The Sermon on the Mount is not a set of abstract ideas or good intentions. It is a practical guide for living a truly grounded life. Those who take his teachings and incorporate them into their lives are like the wise builder, who, with patience and dedication, ensures that his house will be able to withstand whatever comes. And you, hearing this, feel the weight of the choice before you. There is no neutrality. To live according to these teachings requires action, commitment, a daily decision to build your life on the truths that Jesus has presented. The rock is firm, but the building is a continuous process, made with each act of compassion, each choice for justice, each step toward reconciliation, purity, and trust in God. The Sermon on the Mount ends with this strong and vivid image. Jesus has made it clear that the path he offers is not easy, but it is sure, a path that leads to life. And now, it is up to each one to decide how to build their house, whether on the rock, firm and stable, or on the sand at the mercy of the storms. With his final words, the crowd feels the depth of this call. It is not just about hearing him in that moment, but about taking these teachings into life, into every decision, every relationship, every step along the way.